Tim, you're muted.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm Tim Hinkle. I'm an assistant commissioner at the Minnesota DOT and the current chair of AASHTO's Committee on Performance-Based Management. Welcome to this joint AASHTO Committee on Performance-Based Management and Transportation Performance Management Pooled Fund quarterly meeting. Thanks to everybody for your time today. I know everybody is extremely busy, yet these forums provide an excellent opportunity to gather and to learn. Couldn't do this without the help of many, in particular, the committee's vice chair, Christos Xenophontos. Christos, if you can you say hello as well?
Thank you, Tim. And actually, I'm probably the last person of a long line of people that they have worked to do this today. And this has really been one great team working together to bring these webinars. So if you are not a member of the pooled fund is now becoming technical services. It has already become. So please do join AASHTO Technical Services Program, for performance management. Matt is going to pay me extra for those words, by the way.
The bill's in the mail, apparently, Matt. Thanks, Christos, and thanks to the many that contribute to this important forum and to the committee work, including the technical subcommittees and work group chairs, co-chairs, vice chairs, and the many members and friends. We just can't do any of this without your help. Special thanks to Dr. Hardy, who is always working hard behind the scenes to make this successful. And of course, our thanks to FHWA for your continued partnership with AASHTO, the committee, and the pooled fund members. I'm a broken record, but I'll say it again. The purpose of these quarterly web calls is to share AASHTO and the committee's information and updates with the members, as well as the pooled fund members, and in particular, to get input on the performance management needs. Matt said this already, but I'll repeat it. Logistical reminders. Links to the notes and slides from this web call will be posted on the TPM Pooled Fund web portal. That's tpm-portal.com and will be distributed to all members after today's call. If you would please stay muted unless you have a question, and always use the comments or chat box. Put your questions in the chat box so that we can get to you, as parts of this meeting will be presentations, and it's easier for us to manage those presentations if we can wait until the end of those presentations. So entering your questions will remind you as well as us to respond to your needs. Moving into the next slide and introducing what we have to present today. A lot jam-packed into a short period of time. We're going to kick things off with the research subcommittee chair, William Johnson, who is with the Colorado DOT. He will provide a quick tour of the research management system, what we're calling now RMS for short, and describe proposals that have been submitted for fiscal year 2023, as well as talk about the upcoming research symposium. We had one research symposium, part one. He'll be talking about part two coming up in April. Then we're going to welcome Deb Miller from the University of Kansas. She's going to talk about NCHRP 08127 related to disruptive technologies. After Deb, we're going to hear from Michael Grant with ICF, who is going to provide a summary of a project that's just wrapping up, NCHRP 2307, titled Effective Target Setting. And to round things out, Perry Lubin from Spy Pond Partners will cover the NCHRP 20-24-127 project, which is related to TPM issues and challenges. As I noted earlier, and the reason why we want you to put your questions in the chat box is we will reserve Q&A for after we listen to these three feature presentations. After we get through the feature part of our meeting, then we'll get an update from FHWA. Nelson Hoffman should be with us to help us with that update. And after Nelson, we'll go to Dr. Hardy, who will give us an AASHTO update. And there are a number of key items that Matt is going to cover, including and talk about the transition of the TPM pooled fund to the technical services program, as well as an important product of work that's been going on, which is the committee's action plan. As indicated earlier today in emails as well as comments, we're allowing for pre-recording of the subcommittee and work group updates. That allows us to cover the important information that we want to pass along to you, as well as to provide ample time for discussion of the technical services program and the action plan. So please go online. I think Lori has provided to everybody the access point for those pre-recorded presentations to give you that usual update that we receive here. Whew, that's a lot to cover today. Let me just check to see if anybody has any additions, questions, anything that I missed. I'm not seeing anything. So let's move to the agenda, and let me turn it over to the research chair and get our first topic, William Johnson, the research updates. William?
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, so my name is William Johnson. I'm the Performance and Asset Management Branch Manager for the Colorado Department of Transportation. I laugh here when I look at leadership and key roles. Roles is plural. It's just me. I am looking for a vice chair. So if you are employed by a DOT, please reach out to me. We do some interesting stuff here. You'll notice there that it says TPM, TAM, and ERM. It stands for Transportation Performance Management, Asset Management, and Enterprise Risk Management. Those are the respective disciplines that fall under the research that I sort of oversee the process for developing as part of the chair there for CPBM. And you could just see quickly is my job is really to organize. I do develop some research topics. I don't develop them all. It's more to make sure that through our research pipeline, everything from ideation to we're submitting a full-on research project to now that the research is done, how do we move towards implementing this and getting this out to DOTs and MPOs and others to use? That's sort of what I cover. I have developed here a quick timeline to look at. And you can see, hey, January's past us. Now we're moving more towards April. So what is happening in a couple weeks here is the Research and Innovation Council will be finalizing or really voting on which projects they're going to fund for the next fiscal year. Next slide, I'll cover the things that we proposed out of this group. The other thing I wanted to cover is, although it says April TBD, it's probably going to be in May, that second research symposium. The first research symposium, #1, occurred February 2nd. And out of that, we developed roughly 32 topical areas that we're interested in. As I take you on a tour of the research management system, I'll show you where you can find those and show you what's currently in the pipeline and how we work through our workflow. But the important thing here is, hey, it's not too late to contact DOT research directors. They're supposed to no later than April 1st send in their list for prioritization. We do have a prioritized list that we referred other member states to. And then pay attention to that date for that research symposium too. Always looking for more ideas. The ideas that we have, we're getting a little bit more meat on the bones for that. Next slide, please, Lori. Yeah, so I talked to you about the research that was proposed. These are the topical ideas. We proposed 7 of them. And if you look at the titles of it, they are pretty varied in nature. And I think that really represents the TPM, TAM, and ERM disciplines that we bring together under CPBM. In doing so, this list is in order of the priority that we established at various meetings last year. These are the things that we encourage people to do. So as research and innovation, council gets together and, actually decides on, here's the one that's going to be funded. I'll be coming back and I'll be giving an update on what those are. And in the research management system, I'll show you what that will look like. Next slide, please. Now, the good thing about having a research management system is it does dictate workflow, and more so, it's pretty transparent in terms of how you look at how ideas are developed into full-on research needs statements, and how we prioritize those and what comes out in terms of things that are in the project pipeline. We're taking concepts, those things that are ideas generated from various workshops and symposiums being some of them, but other meetings, they get developed. I could think of a couple of research workshops on risk management that occurred last year, where a whole slew of topics were identified and developed through there. Well, the research management system stores those ideas, so that if something is not selected, it still maintains it within the archives and you can look at it later. It shows you candidate projects. So these are ideas that have that more meat on the bone, and you'll be able to look at those and see, okay, these are the things that the different committees are talking about and trying to flesh out and turn into that next phase, a full-on research needs statement. Those statements, what we'll do is at subsequent meetings, refer back to the timeline, we'll go through and we'll prioritize what statements we're going to actually put forward as here is the research proposal from CPBM. And then what you'll get is the project pipeline. So here, Lori, we're gonna strategically share my screen here.
You should be able to share now.
And I'm sharing.
Looks good.
Cool. So I was here, give me one second. There, I posted in the chat and you could follow along with me. Now, even though it says TAM Research Management System Beta, this really is covering all the research for the Committee on Performance-Based Management for AASHTO. We're working on extending this similar functionality across the other portals. The other portals is, I'm clicking here up at the top where it says Transportation Management Hub. You'll see a link to all that other stuff. Now from here, if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see exactly that workflow I was talking about. And if you click on this, these are the concepts that have been developed in the past. And these are very much just what it says, concepts or ideas. And with those, you'll see a number of them. And an easy rule of thumb is to look at the year here. You'll see 22, excuse the scrolling, and 21. So if I'm just looking at 22, I'll be able to find the 32 ideas that were identified in symposium number 1. Now, we've tried to put a quick coding here. So you know that SMET is System Mobility and Emerging Technology. ERM is Enterprise Risk Management. OM is Organizational Management. TAM is asset management for just quick navigation. And I encourage you, as you're developing ideas or considering ideas for further research, that you look at that. Now, I'm not going to necessarily go over the candidates and statements. I'm going to jump over here to projects. And this is a project pipeline. So you'll find here the 7 research needs statements that we proposed that the Research and Innovation Council will be voting on in mid-April. And if I just click on that, it provides a lot more details. So this is what a full research needs statement looks like. And if I go and click, other things like full page, it will give me the actual format that we need for that full-on research needs statement. So you can see these things are pretty robust documents. A lot of the research needs statements are high level, but it's complete in terms of identifying, well, there should be a description there, but list, search, perform, objectives, potential and benefits. And if I scroll further down here, I'll be able to see the things that are in progress program. That means, it's been funded. They're waiting for the panel to come together and either select or develop the scope of work or hire a consultant for. So you'll be able to see the status on that, as well as active projects that are in the works. Now, if I'm looking for specifically the projects that we're going to be discussing, I'm going to limit myself here to time, 2024, 127. I could go in there and click on it. And again, it provides me a lot of details about what's going on with that project. And specifically, you're looking at the objectives in the background. And then the last thing I want to show you is, hey, what research was recently completed, William? Well, it's here in the research management system. Again, if I click on some of these things here, I'll be able to find the information about it. And if it has been published, I'll be able to find the publication for this document. And we did some updates this morning, so sorry. I was looking for one that was published. I'm just clicking around now. Here we go. This is one that is actually published. So easy access to all the information you need. It's stored there. You could get the actual published documentation within it. So I encourage you to, 1, come here early and often. 2 is we want updates for these projects. So if you have updates, even if it's just midstream, that is, it's an active project, we're still moving on it. But if you want to post documents, presentations, any updated information, please send it along to me. We'll make sure that it gets up. Honestly, the benefit is to you and your project, as well as the research discipline as a whole, to keep people apprised of the progress of your research. It really helps out on the life cycle of your project, and also in getting a better end result. I'm going to stop sharing. Lori, if you could bring up that presentation one more time, please. Yeah, so good news in the short term, although the Research and Innovation Council has not yet met to discuss the seven proposals that we had. We did get one research project funded. This is 2044, which is implementation support. And this is a continuation guide, a continuation project for the asset valuation guidebook that was developed. So with that one, it is funded at $300K. And I don't think that they've kicked off yet. It was just funded. And then the future activities, again, it says April TBD. Most likely it's going to happen in May. So before I leave, just a quick reminder that the topics we'll be covering deal with NCHRP 08127, which is disruptive technologies, NCHRP 23-07, which is effective target setting, and then NCHRP 2024, which is TPM issues and challenges. So I'm going to kick it back to you guys, and enjoy the presentations that we have set for you today.
Before we go there, William, thanks for your leadership of the subcommittee. And today, thanks for that excellent overview of the RMS, what's in the research pipeline, as well as the research related event coming up. Let me just check to see with Dr. Hardy and others if there's any hands up or any questions that anybody might have.
I don't see
Appears
any
to
questions
be
specifically at
none.
this time.
All right, as always, if you do have questions that come to mind, put those in the chat box. Let's continue the feature presentation with our first presenter, and welcome Deb Miller, who's with the University of Kansas, covering the first topic, which I think is going to be of great interest to all of us today, which is the 808-127 impact of new disruptive technologies on the performance of DOTs. I think many of us know Deb, but let me just give some of her background for any of you that do not. Deb is currently the director of the Kansas University of Public Management Center, which is the professional development arm of the School of Public Affairs and Administration. I've been involved with Deb for many years, and given her involvement at the DOT level, would call her DOT family. She's headed numerous AASHTO task forces and work groups, and she actually served 9 years as the chair of the Standing Committee on Planning, and I had the privilege of being able to work with her directly in that capacity. She's also served on the Eno Foundation's Board of Advisors, and is and has been an active member of the Transportation Research Board. Many of you have probably seen her in that capacity. She was a member of the TRB's Executive Committee for, I believe, 5 years, including a year that Deb actually served as chair. Appreciate your willingness to join us today, Deb. And with that introduction, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's really nice to be here. I always enjoy getting involved with the transportation group and seeing old friends. So I want to talk about disruptive technologies, and I'm going to get right into it. So today I'll talk a little bit about the background of this particular NCHRP project. The ultimate deliverable is going to be a guidebook. And of course, no presentation would be correct without, next steps. And so you can see the panel who has guided this work. And Christos is on the phone or on the call with us today, and he's been a very active member of the panel. This is the consulting team. Sam Van Hecke is our PI. And Sam would be giving this presentation today, but he's off with his family on spring break. And like many of us, I think probably is ready for and deserves a break. So I am his stand-in today. And I'll just let you take a quick look at who the people are who are on our team. So when we were asked by the NCHRP panel to do this project, when we were selected to do the project, I should say, this is what the panel said they were looking for. They wanted a framework for an effective organizational structure to look at performance and, excuse me, I didn't mean to go off that slide, and management systems. And they wanted to understand how state DOTs and other transportation agencies could adapt to and respond to current and emerging disruptive technologies. They wanted us to consider the key components of what categorized disruptive technologies, to look at different models for the organization of this work and for partnerships, to understand the roles and responsibilities for agencies, and to give some consideration to how we could do some planning for implementation so that this would live on. The primary audience for the work is state DOTs, as well as their planning partners. And I think it's important to note that the idea was to be sure that there was work that was understandable and of interest to decision makers, but we wanted to be able to put this together in a way so that we could drill down to the staff who might be asked to head up disruptive technology initiatives at the Department of Transportation. So the approach that was laid out was that we would first define and categorize sort of both technology itself and what technology was out there, what we even mean by disruption. What sort of performance are we talking about and looking at? And we even wanted to do a little bit of defining and categorizing of DOTs. And then, of course, always important to prioritize. So what technologies are most likely really to be important, and what performance measures are those technologies most likely to have an impact on. We use this concept of sort of mini sprints, which in some ways is just a much more organized way to do brainstorming, so that we could get all our thoughts on the table, kind of characterize them, look at them, move them around, and look for some good ideas. And we laid out some thoughts for the guide around the need to both identify in the guide, to then evaluate, decide which things were the highest priorities, and then an implementation approach. And I do want to say, particularly to this committee that's so actively engaged in the performance management world, that a lot of work has been done on creating a framework and a process to do performance management. And though it was in part of the scope of services and in the committees, the NCHRP panels, proposal in terms of what they were looking for, that we should consider what would be an appropriate framework for disruptive technologies. Our conclusion is that the framework that exists is the appropriate framework and makes sense. And the fact that we're looking at disruptive technologies really doesn't change anything. And just very quickly, this is out of FHWA's website. So it's just a reminder to say that there is a lot of work out there in terms of the framework for performance management. And this is a look at it. And we think that for people who will be doing work in the disruptive technology world, they also need to be really familiar with the guidebook and the work related to transportation performance management. We did a literature research. Again, you know, like what research is ever complete if you don't begin with that literature research. But I have to say, I think it's very interesting. It will be a part of the deliverable when we are completed with this. And so I would recommend to people, if you're really interested in the concept of disruptive technologies, that you take a look at it. I thought it was well done and was interesting. And through that process, we used it as an opportunity to understand better the technology, the issue of what really does mean and what creates a disruption, to look at organizational performance at DOTs, and then also at transportation system performance, because there are two areas of performance that are really important, but not necessarily the same thing, and what DOT response might be. And so what I want to do today then is just take the work that was done, particularly through that little literature research, and just walk through and show you how our thinking evolved on this issue of disruption. We ultimately built some use cases around technology to determine both if it would be disruptive, and secondly, how likely it is that it might be implemented. We looked at 3 possible DOTs of the future, and DOTs of the future in terms of how they might be impacted and impacted by disruptive technology, and then as a consequence evolve. And while we've not yet put the guide together, that's going to be our next step. We wanted to talk just a minute about what we think the structure of that guide is going to be. So to begin, it became clear that technology, just because it says technology, is not necessarily disruptive. And furthermore, it might even be disruptive technology, but maybe it doesn't matter to us. And so we ended up concluding that what we needed to do was to look at 3 issues. What was the use case for the technology? Did it make sense? Was there a use case? Is there a business model? Even if we can see the use case, is there likely to be a business out there who is going to set it up, proliferate it, move the particular technology out? And then in terms of knowing when and how we're going to be impacted by it, we want to look at and consider what is that threshold point at which the market proliferation has reached a scale that now we've got to really pay attention to it. In essence, you know, what is that tipping point? So when we started looking at this issue of disruptive technology, one of the other things that became clear is that in many ways, some of what we're going to be looking at is going to either be built on existing and core technologies, or it's going to be several core or existing technologies that come together. And so you can see some examples of that are on the screen. We also realized that we would be looking at some both examples of disruptive technology that would be external to DOTs, but impactful on the system that we managed. And again, there are some examples of those on the screen. And there would then be some technologies that would be internal to DOTs, how they operate, how they do their work. And again, you can see some examples of that on the screen. So in terms of defining disruptive technology, and we actually spent a fair amount of time in the early stages of this project looking at it. One, we were looking at technologies that would displace existing technologies and processes and improve performance, or in some cases, perhaps create entirely new capabilities. We noted that a disruptive technology can both impact a DOT's ability to manage their own operational performance, and that, again, those technologies could be either external, disrupting the system itself and perhaps outside of the DOT's direct control, or internal processes that, again, are disruptive, but inside the DOT's control. And in fact, they might be technologies that DOT could choose to use or choose not to use. And then ultimately, I'm not going to read it to you. I want to be aware of time, but this is the definition that we adopted for disruptive technology for this particular project. Well, let me pause there just a minute. Maybe I went too quick. I want to show you, and in the guidebook that we'll be putting together, we went through a series of technologies that were analyzed, came up in the literature research, and created use cases for them, looked at how we think they might impact performance and whether or not it was a business model for them. And this is one of those slides that's hard to see, but I just wanted you to kind of have a sense of what's being put in the guide. And then we pulled out just a couple of them so that you could take a closer look at the technology and what we mean when we talk about the use case, its performance impact, and then the business model. So once we get the report put together, these graphics are going to be in it, and we hope that the final implementable and deliverable is going to be an interactive product so that you can go back and forth between whether it's an internal, and then how does it connect to the technology, and how does it connect to the business model. And so this is just an example for you to look at today. As I said, we also talked a bit about what we thought might be possible DOTs of the future based on evolving and new and disruptive technology. And so, this was just some forward thinking that we did to think about how it might look. And so, I think the first one is sort of the notion, we called it the Department of Maintenance, but it is perhaps a department that even in the world of evolving and disruptive technology still stays fairly focused on maintaining the system under its control, isn't terribly proactive in terms of trying to create these public-private partnerships that some of the disruptive technology might create. And it's really, in some ways, I think it's easy to look at something like Department of Maintenance and think that it's almost like a pejorative, and it's not meant that way at all. It's just to say that if you think about possible approaches DOTs could take, they could stay reasonably close to existing status quo with some changes, but just not be terribly actively involved in managing or distributing some of these new technologies. The other concept we looked at, we called the Department of Mobility. And I would say that in terms of our thinking, what we called the Department of Mobility and the Department of Strategic Development are somewhat similar in that in both of these cases, we would be talking about departments that would really be very significantly impacted by disruptive technologies and would look quite different from what DOTs look like today. Our thinking of what distinguished the Department of Mobility is that it would be a department that is a bit more internal in that it would really stay focused on managing the system with these new disruptive technologies and owning as much of that technology as is feasible. Contrasting with the Department of Strategic Development, we really thought of that as a department that would be a bit more of a like a distribution system. So there would be lots of public-private partnerships and partnerships perhaps even with other state or federal agencies. And so there'd be like sort of a distributive approach, you know, think of it as a bit more of a federation. But again, in this particular case, we were imagining a department that is significantly involved and impacted by distributed technology, or excuse me, not distributed, disruptive technology, but in a very distributed way. So the guidebook ultimately that we're going to be putting together is built on these actually 6 points. We kind of began at what we called 0, which is just becoming, you know, tech aware. And, you know, all the DOTs and other transportation partners are starting at different places, but all of us no doubt need to become much more aware. And it's also not just a question of creating awareness inside the DOT, but thinking about who are key partners and players and stakeholders. And we might even be talking about things like legislative bodies and governors and other elected officials in the state to start thinking about how do we bring people along to understand that there is this developing technology and it's going to definitely change the way that we operate and be disruptive. So in the guidebook, we're going to include some information that talks about, if you're not already doing it, here are some steps you might want to be taking and things you might want to be thinking about, just so that you can move to a tech aware status. And then you can see the other 5 points. And as I said, the goal here is to have this very interactive approach put together in terms of how the playbook would work. And finally, the schedule. This is where we are. We're working right now to complete the draft guidance and have a panel meeting scheduled for April. So we're almost to April now, so that will be happening shortly. And we'll also at the same time be presenting our implementation plan. We are scheduled to have our final report completed into TRB in August. So that was really fast. And I've got to pause though, because we've got 2 more presentations and I know that we'll be doing questions after all of those presentations. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Deb, for providing us with that overview of the guidance for this project. Extremely interesting. And I'm guessing we'll have some questions once we get through the remainder of the presentations. Up next, let me introduce Mr. Grant. Michael Grant is the Vice President of Transportation at ICF. He has over 25 years of experience helping transportation agencies advance performance-based planning and sustainable transportation decision-making to improve mobility, the environment, and the community livability. We've worked with Michael in many, many projects over the years. Thanks for being with us today to help us to understand and to summarize NCHRP Project 2307, the effective methods for setting transportation performance targets. Take it away, Michael.
Okay, thanks so much, Tim. Can you see the slide?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, I'll provide some highlights of the work that our teams conducted on the NCHRP 2307 project. I'll just first acknowledge we have a great panel for this project, and within our team, I want to acknowledge the staff from ICF, as well as support from High Street and Applied Pavement Technology, who've been key to this study. I will give just a little bit of background on where we are, because as it was noted earlier, this study began over a year ago, and we're getting towards the end parts of it. As we all know, that the process of setting targets can be challenging for agencies, and state DOTs are required to establish targets for all of the national performance measures in coordination with MPOs, and many MPOs are looking to set targets as well. But as you can see in this diagram on the right side, this is from the older National Highway Institute target setting course. Even if you have historic data on transportation performance trends, which is not always the case going back very far, how you develop those projections or forecasts in order to support setting the target is challenging. And short-term trends may be different than longer-term trends. And more importantly, what are the factors that are really affecting performance over time is a big question. And we've seen this very notably with the COVID-19 pandemic, where there were significant changes in reliability and congestion on the roadways. So one of the issues here really, and that kind of evolved through the course of this project, is to develop and disseminate a practitioner-ready guidebook on methods for target setting. The study involved 3 phases. We began, as I said, over a year ago on foundational research. We reviewed information reported to the Federal Highway Administration through the TPM dashboard on all of the state DOT's performance target setting methods, the qualitative information they provided, and in addition to the actual targets. We did some follow-up research with individual state DOTs with interviews and focus groups. And then actually more recently through the mid performance reporting period, we went back to some of the data to look at were there revisions or adjustments to targets and adjustments to target setting methods as well. Phase 2 of this effort was to really identify a set of methods for setting targets that are implementable and seem effective, and then to actually test those through a pilot testing effort and validate those methodologies with a number of state DOTs. And finally, now we're in phase 3 of the effort, which is outreach and technical assistance. And we just produced a draft guidebook, which is under review by the panel. And that guidebook will hopefully be completed over the next couple of months. And then we will be undertaking efforts to develop a series of workshops, both web-based and in person, to share more detailed information from the guidebook. So I'll just highlight very briefly some of the information we've seen even from phase 1, that while we're looking across many different performance areas, safety, infrastructure condition, congestion, reliability, we see some common types of target setting methods. There's kind of a policy-based approach. All of these are data-driven, but in some cases, the data is based more on a policy-based focus on trying to achieve a certain target by a longer term target or some sort of policy direction towards that targeted level. We also see analyses that look at historic trends and really do trend line analysis. There's been some interesting approaches using what we consider risk-based approaches, where the agency is looking at the variability in performance and what is that kind of band of likeliness that a performance target would be within a certain range, and using that kind of information to help set the target, as well as statistical models where agencies have actually developed economic or regression or other types of models to forecast using factors that influence performance and using that information to predict what the future performance would likely be, as well as other tools and models such as pavement management systems, bridge management systems, and even travel demand models have been used for some of the types of congestion and reliability measures. So our second phase, after we identified within each performance area methods, was to actually test some of these with, or actually work with a few states to test them through a piloting effort. And there were 7 states that volunteered to be part of this pilot, spend some time with our research team where we reviewed different methods to support target setting, looked at explanatory factors that might help to explain changes in performance, worked with the agencies who often put in considerable time as well to gather data and support some analysis, and then conduct some forecasting using a couple of different methods. And that information was helpful to ultimately assess what's workable, where were there challenges faced, and what are some of the issues in using some of these methods. The result of this, out of all of that, is the guidebook that is a key product of this effort and is designed to help state DOTs and MPOs identify effective methods for transportation performance target setting. And I'll spend just a brief time on the guidebook. I will note that this is under the panel's review right now, so it's not final, and we're looking forward to receiving some feedback from the panel. So there may be some changes in the ultimate guidebook that's produced. But the way it's organized right now is into 3 primary parts. The first part of the guide provides an overview of different target setting methods and tips on target setting. And so it talks about some foundational issues and practical tips around what makes for an effective target setting approach. The second part is really a more detailed menu of target setting methods organized by the different performance areas. And the third part goes beyond the nationally required measures and addresses other types of performance measures as well, and why agencies may wish to set targets, as well as some examples of performance measures and targets for other types of measures. I'll just provide a few highlights. There's a lot in the guidebook, and as I said, still under review, but in this first piece on the overview, one thing we recognize is regardless of the type of methodology that's used to set the target, we see a few different types of philosophies around target setting. And so this can range from what we might say conservative or very kind of risk averse target setting to trying to ensure that the agency can meet or attain the target, to using an approach that's very focused on predictive analysis and identifying a target that is predicted to be met. And on the other end, a more aspirational focus where ideally the work is still very data-driven, but it reflects a commitment to improved outcomes. So even if the data suggests that performance may be declining, or there may be an increase in fatalities, for instance, for safety, there's an aspirational component where we say, well, we're going to set a target that reduces that amount, some level below that, or improves upon what the predicted level will be. So that's kind of a broad philosophical approach. We also looked at, well, what are elements of effective methods themselves? And there's 4 characteristics that are identified in the guidebook. We want things that are easy to apply, that don't require a lot of staff time and resources. We also want methods that are technically robust. And sometimes these kind of work against each other a little bit. This might require some more complex analysis to look at what factors are affecting performance. We also look at the issue of ease of communication about the target that comes out of the method, and allows for policy considerations to consider broader long-term goals, for instance, and how does that relate into the target that's being set. Ultimately, of these 4 kind of method issues, we believe, or what we've heard from some of the states and agencies involved in the study, is that effective target setting is not just about setting a number and then, whether you meet it or not, but it's really about helping inform improvements and strategies. And so having information about the factors that drive performance is valuable as part of the target setting approach. And also having approaches that motivate stakeholders and decision makers to engage in discussions about the actions that help meet those targets is important. So it's partly a process issue of how do we work together to set those targets, and how do we work together as part of the target setting methodology. I'll just note here that the second part of the guidebook has this menu of methods. It's organized into categories based on the national performance measures. We did not include the CMAQ on-road emissions measures, but have sections of the guidebook that address each of the other national measures. And this was based on sort of input from some of the initial research and from the panel. Each in the second section of the guidebook, we have essentially what we're considering like a fact sheet for each method. And so for each method, it provides some information about what is the method, when can it be used, what kinds of resources are needed, what are steps for implementing that method, and advantages and limitations. And also it includes some information at a glance about these characteristics of the different methods. So hopefully users can kind of flip through. You wouldn't read the guidebook front to end, but you would look at a performance area and be able to flip through and look at the different types of methods and understand how they're applied, as well as examples of those methods. And I'll just highlight very briefly here. I won't get into detail, but just as an example for under safety related methods, we see different approaches. And so the guidebook has some information about the various approaches. One example here is a targeted reduction. In this case, there's a trend, but the targeted reduction was based on a selection of a 1% reduction per year, or annual reduction. Another approach is using time series analysis to develop a trend line, which accounts for all of the previous years of data that you're encompassing within the trend line. Other areas have developed more complex statistical models. And then we looked at some approaches that include adjustments from projected trends. And so here's just an example from South Carolina, where they looked at the trend line. And in this case, the fatality trend is upward, but accounting for different safety programs and other factors, there was an attempt to look at, well, how much can we bring that down and what would be a reasonable target? Similarly, with reliability, we have a number of methods. I won't get into all of these now, but there are range from time series trends to this performance risk analysis. I will note something that were interesting here as we went through the pilot. As I noted, the COVID-19 pandemic had huge impacts on travel. And so this graphic on the left-hand side, you can see the travel time reliability from the Oklahoma pilot, some of the work that was highlighted here. And the reliability was at a, it varied, but at a fairly consistent level. Then post-pandemic, the reliability increased dramatically because of the reduction in vehicle travel. Yet that's come back down towards their historical trend. So this kind of analysis, even with time series, kind of shows there is some explanation in the guidebook. How would you look at disruptions also, or changes in trends over time, and consider, is there a new trend, or is it moving back to an old trend or something different? I'll just skip ahead. There's a lot of detail on the different methods. Hopefully it'll be very valuable to people to look at the different types of tools and also models that some states have created to forecast these. The third part, the last part of the guidebook, addresses non-required measures. And so this addresses, you can see here, 5 different topics: or accessibility, greenhouse gas emissions, active transportation, transit ridership, and customer satisfaction measures, and simply provide some examples of these types of measures, as well as some of the types of targets that states or MPOs have set in relation to other types of measures and how they're doing that and thinking about that. One thing I will want to note for this group and for others is that the outreach includes not just the guidebook, but several workshops. The first item here under virtual is not something that our group is organizing, but under Matt and Lori and the team here at AASHTO has a TPM webinar series. There is one scheduled for May 18th on target setting. We're hoping to provide a little bit more insight on the guidebook at that point. And then we will be arranging a series of 6 web-based workshops, one focused on each of different performance measure areas. And those are planned for late May through July. And we'll have registration links forthcoming. So look forward to hopefully having you and others participate or share that information with those who would benefit from this information. There are also 2 in-person workshops, and these are tied into national conferences, and not everything's finalized, but we're hoping and we're anticipating that one of those workshops will be at the AMPO annual conference and another at the AASHTO conference on performance-based management, planning, and data. So look forward to those opportunities to participate. And with that, there's some more information. I can put in the link to the NCHRP study, and then I'm happy to answer questions at the very end of all the presentations.
Michael, thanks so much for that presentation. Thanks for your contributions, which have been many over the years, in particular today to this particular topic. We look forward to seeing that final guidance when it's published. Attendees, as Michael said, just a reminder, if you do have questions, please put those in the chat box and we'll come back to you once we complete all of the presentations. Moving quickly to our final feature presentation and rounding out the research presentations is Perry Lubin. He'll provide a summary of NCHRP Project 20-24-127 titled Transportation Performance Management Implementation Issues, Concerns, and Challenges. For those of you that don't know Perry, he is the Chief Product Officer at Spy Pond Partners. He's led the development and the implementation of the AASHTO Committee on Performance-Based Management Information Clearinghouse and the TPM portal. Perry also developed and currently administers the FHWA Transportation Performance Management Technical Assistance Program Toolbox. Perry, the floor is yours.
Thanks. And I've recorded this ahead of time because I'm going to be doing some videos and demos. So I'm just going to start that now. Hi, this is Perry Lubin with Spy Pond Partners. Thanks very much for the chance to share a bit with you about NCHRP Project 2024-127, Transportation Performance Management Implementation Issues, Concerns, and Challenges. This is a project I've been working on along with Lori Richter and Jana Park, who are also both on today's call. So, quick agenda for this quick presentation. I'm going to first cover the research objectives and then give a brief summary of the research approach. Then we'll spend most of our time looking at a couple of key products and the findings of this project and discussing next steps. Those products are first an action plan presenting TPM issues and challenges and associated mitigation strategies, and then also a demo of a web app that presents the same information in a user-friendly, interactive format. So the objectives for this research project are to document TPM issues, to prioritize these issues, and then turn the findings over to AASHTO CPBM at the end of the project to carry forward and continue to update. We're also looking to provide, as part of this, a framework that will help DOTs get a handle on what it takes to address or mitigate or eliminate some of these issues. So a framework that can be applied to produce a level of effort estimate for one or more individual mitigation strategies. The questions we're looking to answer through this research are really, what are agencies' key TPM implementation challenges? And then what are some practical options for mitigating or addressing these? And we set out to produce an action plan where you, as a state DOT or another agency, can pick up the document, quickly pick out one or more of these common challenges that we've identified and say, yes, that's an issue that we've experienced too. It's something that we want to tackle. And you can read through to find a couple of practical mitigation approaches with some good notes to get you started on stakeholders, analytical complexity, barriers, potential for improving TPM results, relative cost, first steps, and more. And so definitely we hope this will be a project that's really of interest to all of you on the line today, and we hope the way we've approached it will be valuable. So, okay, very quickly, our approach was to draw in a lot of information on TPM challenges from the research base and beyond, and comb through it in a couple of iterations. First, to draw out key themes and contexts, then to identify and categorize the challenges, to start to assess them in order to get a handle on the relative priority of these issues. We identified 18 issues in 3 tiers of criticality and filtered these by the TPM areas that they impact. That's safety, system performance, or bridge or pavement condition, along with some other factors. Then once we had something we felt pretty good about, we were able to validate and refine this with practitioners and start to work with practitioners to identify some potential mitigation actions that could help address these challenges. And then we circled back in order to identify areas where there had been a relatively greater impact of COVID-19. And altogether, this outreach involved 3 workshop sessions with over 40 stakeholders, a series of 10 agency interviews in the first phase of the project, and then a survey and 3 focus group sessions in the second phase. So this was a process that involved a lot of outreach, and I'm sure many of you on the call today were part of the process, so thanks for your input. And the outcome of the process is a TPM action plan that summarizes the key issues under those 4 themes and presents associated mitigation actions for each. So let's take a closer look at the results. Just given the time, we'll take a look at the first tier of 7 most critical issues out of the 18 total, and then we'll cover highlights here and get into a little more detail when we look at the action plan and the site. One thing to keep in mind is that each of these issues, as described here in generic terms, has specific applications within one or more TPM areas, safety, system performance, bridge or pavement condition, etc. So the action plan presents those more detailed descriptions, but we'll stick at the high level on this overview here. So, okay, of these 7 issues, the first is limited experience modeling and forecasting. And what this means is many agencies have limited experience predicting the federal measures. And in some cases, agencies lack approaches that they can apply or methods for making future predictions or modeling desired performance. The next issue is control of investment decisions. For example, state DOTs must set NHS targets, but in some cases, performance is driven by local investment decisions. Or conversely, MPOs may choose to set their own targets, but they may have limited control over state DOT investments or infrastructure, or facilities owned by towns or cities or other agencies. Next up is communicating national versus state measures. This was another key issue. States reported that federal measures can be challenging to communicate and are often different from state or agency measures. And then there's, of course, several aspects to this. For example, federal measures and targets may be at variance with agency policies, or, for example, asset management practices could provide an incomplete view of performance, or even are just sometimes complex and difficult to articulate. Coordination with other owners is another important challenge. Coordination with external stakeholders is often needed for setting targets, but the process can be complex and require significant resources to ensure that appropriate parties are included in target setting discussions in order to achieve effective outcomes. So agencies do face challenges in coordinating with each other, just given the cross-disciplinary nature of TPM target setting. Other issues in that most critical tier include resourcing, timing of project and program development timeframes, and then external communication and coordination. There's a lot here, but hopefully this kind of communicates to you the findings developed through the effort. I also just want to touch briefly on the fact that mitigation strategies are identified within each of these categories of engagement, guidance, research, and training, plus a 5th policy or regulatory category for mitigation strategies. And we also had some observations on the basis of our follow-up surveys and focus groups addressing the impact of COVID-19 on these and other issues. And findings were mixed, but some of the greatest impacts were, maybe unsurprisingly, aligned with some of the greatest challenges. But we also heard some of the impacts had been modest, even in areas like target setting, where the team had anticipated that these issues would be significant. So, okay, these are the products of the research that tie all of this together. The first is an action plan. It's a traditional PDF document that presents prioritized issues and defined mitigation actions and describes a level of effort framework for assessing mitigation approaches. And then there is the TPM Action Planner web application, which presents the same prioritized issues but has linked mitigation actions and an applied level of effort framework. Now, taking a look first at the PDF, we've really tried to make the traditional PDF document easy to navigate and use and helpful to find and allow you to find helpful information. So while this document can be read cover to cover, it's also designed with navigation aids to allow you to address specific questions or browse directly to a topic of particular interest. So I'll just quickly describe what you'll see when you have a chance to review the action plan. Each issue is presented in the same format with a theme, title, and description up top. Applicable performance areas each receive their own summary. Practitioner input that we captured through the project is summarized in call-out boxes, and mitigation actions are grouped by mitigation strategies. There are also example mitigation approaches presented through for each of these issues. And we've tried to make sure that, that in general, this is a well-organized document with a strong, clear format so that even though it presents a lot of information, it is not overwhelming to browse or to use as an index to identify a relevant issue. But at the same time, we're very excited about the TPM Action Planner, which we've been working to develop alongside a process for updating it going forward. So now what I'll do is I'll just pause and I'll give a quick tour of the TPM Action Planner. It's customizable and interactive and is designed to allow you to explore some of this material without reading through a 100+ page report. Practitioners can use the Action Planner tool to identify issues of interest, to pick out pertinent mitigation actions from a connected set of candidates, and can tailor individualized plan of action with a structure for capturing the outcomes that you're aiming for, potential benefits, associated costs, responsible parties, other factors. And then maybe most importantly, the Action Planner provides the opportunity and a couple of simple tools to help keep these issues and mitigation actions up to date, so that, for example, on an annual basis, issues can be struck off the list as they're resolved or their impact diminishes, or a new issue can easily be added as new challenges emerge. Okay, so we'll pause here and take a look at the tool. Okay, welcome to the TPM Action Planner. We'll do a tour of the site. We got about 5 minutes, and so it could be a bit of a whirlwind, but if you bear with me, we'll cover most of the key functionality here, show you how things work. First thing you see when you get to the homepage here are 2 options to sign up or sign in. I've got an account on the site, so I'll sign in. And once I do that, the first thing I see is this main menu with 2 key options here. First is to create a new action plan, and the second is to review my action plans. You can see I've got one saved here. I can jump back into a previously saved plan. That's TPM TSP demo, but why don't I create a new one here? And I'll always have the option to add some descriptive text. And the first thing that comes up is this option to scope my plan with some familiar categories that we have touched on in the presentation. First off, here are these tiers of criticality. So if I want to see everything in the site, I can select all 3 of these tiers. If I'm just interested in addressing some of the most critical issues, I can make that selection. But really what I get to do in this scoping step is to focus on those performance areas where I've got challenges or issues, to look at those sort of high-level themes that reflect those areas I want to tackle, and then also to pick the mitigation strategies that I think are going to be a good match for me. I mean, and you always have the option to pick many or all of these here, but this allows you to kind of narrow in the scope so you're not wrestling with the full range of options that are in that 100+ page document. So the first thing I see here is that 4 issues fit my scope, and I can read through these issue descriptions. I can pull up some additional detail with input from practitioners and some example mitigation applications, and I can pick the ones that match my interests. So one thing I'll do here is just make these initial 2 selections, and when I move on to the next step to start to identify issues within individual performance areas, here in this case safety, in this case emissions, one thing I can do is if I see that there's 4 issues and that's not quite covering everything, I can always take a step back. I can add another sort of top level issue here to my list, and then I can move forward again with some additional options. So in the area of safety, where we're looking at standard approaches for modeling and forecasting safety, if I'm looking to improve my forecasting capabilities, this might be one that I want to tackle. Similarly, with respect to emissions. And so I can make some selections from this list depending on those issues that I want to tackle. And so that brings up the my matching set of actions. So these actions are recommended based on the issues that I've selected. And so I can, for each of these, I can see just what's involved and some helpful resources if those are applicable, and exactly which issue area or which TPM areas these address. I can always toggle that information on and off. And then I can go through and make my selections depending on those mitigation strategies that are appropriate for me. And you'll see this option to open up evaluation mode. We'll get to that in just a second. So for for those mitigation actions that match my interests and capabilities, I can open up this evaluation mode, and this is where all the detail lives on these mitigation actions. So I am able to take these default values that are populated through the research, so information that's needed, potential barriers, first step, customize that. I can add responsible agencies. So for example, if I think FDA is going to be involved in this, I can make that selection. All of this information is locked in and saved to my action plan. I have some detailed cost information that I can input. And when I'm done, I can move on to the next step. And that's where I start to see a summary view of my action plan. So I can see these actions that I've selected. I can take a look at my actions grouped by issues, where I've got a single issue and a couple of matching actions. Or I can take a look at this, this summary that shows these are the issue areas that I've identified, these are the issues that I've selected, and then here are the actions that I've chosen to take. In the stats and more category, I can see a summary of the matching issues and actions, and additionally some helpful resources. So for example, in this case, the Regional Exchange Toolbox, which can help me with some of my engagement activities, that's part of the TPM portal. So then the last thing I just want to highlight is that I've got the option to download a plan, and that brings up this nicely formatted PDF, which I can save or print, but I do always have the option to go back in and modify that plan. Okay, that was very quick, but hopefully we covered the key topics and are ready to wrap up. Okay, so very briefly, what is next? First is the soft launch of the app. Today is the first step in that direction. Then it's to establish the process for keeping the data in the tool up to date. And we're moving ahead quickly to have these steps complete by April 30. So if you have interest in the site and its soft launch, please contact the research team. I'd be happy to hear from you. Thanks very much for the time today. Thanks for giving us a chance to share. And thank you from me, Lori, and Hyana, to the panel members who've contributed tremendously to the project, and many of whom are on the line today. Thank you.
Perry and team, thanks so much for your contributions, timely research. And thanks again to all of our presenters today. Really insightful research that is timely and truly shows the promise of real benefits for the many agencies that have joined us today or couldn't be with us today. We're running a little bit behind, so I'm going to move it over to Matt Hardy very quickly to follow up on Q&A, and then he will move us through some of the administrative topics today. Dr. Hardy.
Yeah, so happy to do Q&A, but I don't see any that are coming up right now. So let me just take one moment to say, if anybody has a question, please raise your hand using the raise your hand functionality, or turn your camera. Oh, Matt Hobrick, you have a question.
Yeah, I just have a question for Deb. I'm sort of curious about the future audiences for the research that you presented. Is that, are you looking to present that to any audiences beyond us? I'm sure the answer is yes, but kind of in particular thinking about like CEO level folks might be in some of those ideas about the DOT of the future.
Yeah, what we're hoping to do is, one, we're going to do a couple of almost like pilots, roundtables, where we want to go through the guide, and we would like to recruit a small number of CEOs who would be willing to do that with us, so we can sort of see, you know, how it's working for them and if it fits their needs. And then we want to recruit a small group of people who might be the type who would be likely to be designated as whoever at the DOT. And then once the guide is finished, we're planning to do, I think, you know, just for now, I'll just call it, you know, like a webinar with a pretty broad invitation list to people who might be interested, to show them how the guide works.
Thank you.
Dr. Hardy, if I could.
Sure, Tim.
For Deb as well, really unique and timely research. I look at the contribution when it comes to the types of organizations that are dealing with disruptive technology, and some of the labels that you're providing in terms of future organizations. That, as a DOT official, feels very, very change oriented. Can you respond to your perspective as a past DOT executive and how we might be able to communicate that kind of change to a DOT?
Well, one of the things, one of the questions that came up in chat, which I really appreciated, was just, noting that when you look at those DOTs of the future, a lot of that's not under the control of existing DOTs. You can say, yes, I want to be that DOT of mobility, but will I have the money? Will I be able to hire the staff? Will I have any of those authorities? And so it wasn't necessarily meant to stand in for something that people could just say, this is where we want our DOT to go, but to recognize, I think, to effectively be involved in transportation as we look at some of these disruptive technologies coming down the road. And in order to be an effective participant almost in the way those are going to roll out and affect transportation, I think DOTs are going to have to evolve somewhat substantially, which is one of the reasons why in the guide we talk about the need not just to start becoming, and we use the term tech savvy, it probably is a little bit broader than that, but helping many stakeholder types in your state, in your environment, understand that some of these changes that are coming, I mean, it's like so many things, it's going to happen whether we want it to or not, it would seem to me. If there is a user case and a business case out there and it can be rolled out, it doesn't matter whether you want it to happen as a DOT or not, it is going to happen. So then, I think the question is how we can best prepare. Can be a difficult one because I worry about that all the time. As you said, Tim, going back to my background of having both worked at a DOT and led a DOT, there is a lot that's just frankly out of your control, no matter how much you want to move in a direction where you just don't have the ability to do it. And I have been worried for some time that what I'll just call the governance environment isn't very good right now. And that's a worry to me. And it's a worry to me in terms of how much DOTs can control their environment and how much is just going to happen to us because we're not allowed really to get into a proactive position.
Well stated. Thanks, Deb. Back to you, Dr. Hardy.
Thanks, Tim. Are there any other questions from people? I don't see any on the chat. I don't see anybody raising their hand. We are now right on time. So, all right, I want to thank Deb, my good friend Deb. When I first came to AASHTO, was the chair of the Committee on Planning, Michael Grant, and then Perry for all the great work on the resource projects. I think the Committee on Performance-Based Management, we do a great job of getting research funded. And this is one way that we're trying to make sure that once we get something funded, that the committee kind of, it's of interest to the committee and we keep interest in it over the life of the project and not wait until it's finished, to kind of say, hey, did you remember about this research project from 3 years ago? We want to make sure that people continually know about it. So thanks for that. Thanks for taking some time to be with us today. So I think
next, done a great job. I'm really happy to see it.
Oh,
thank you.
Next up, I think we have Nelson Hoffman from FHWA is going to be giving the FHWA update. So I'll turn it over to you, Nelson.
Thank you, Matt. Yep, and really interesting research from folks. And I'll keep this relatively brief. Hello again, I'm Nelson Hoffman. I work for the Transportation Performance and Asset Management team at Federal Highways. And just sort of a sort of personnel announcement, you may all know that Steve Gay, who has been the Federal Highway face of asset management, is retiring today. And after almost 41 years, and he had been the team leader for this team that included asset management and transportation over the last year. For an acting position, Alexis Kuklinski, who is a member of the team, has been appointed as the acting team leader. Alexis was going to come today, but as is not uncommon, she got pulled away to deal with sort of something urgent that had come up. So, but going forward for the next 3 months or so, Alexis Kuklinski will be the team leader for our team. So you'll probably see a little bit more of her. So federal highway updates. We are, we in 2022, which is one of the biennial reportings for performance measures for infrastructure, commonly referred to as PM2, and also system performance, which is also commonly referred to as PM3. And so the biennial reporting for that is going to be October 1st of 2022 through the Performance Management Forum, the PMF. And for those who are aware or learning, the PMF opens up beginning of September, and then there's a 1-month period for the PMF to be open for state DOTs to put in the required information in the form, and then there'll be a 1-month review period from Federal Highway Division offices of the state DOTs submittals, and then they will be the PMF will close and we'll move on into some other duties pertaining to the information that's submitted. So one thing to note is that we have put online and available to all the information that will make up the PMF questions. So this year, this biennial reporting is the end of the first performance period. So one of the reports that will be submitted is the full performance period progress report, which we refer to as the FPP. So the detailed questions of what will be asked of the state DOTs, and then also the pre-populated fields, those, we don't have the pre-populated field information yet. That won't be coming until the PMF actually opens. But the information is available online at the TPM, Federal Highways TPM website, and I can put that in the chat pod. Then also the baseline performance report, which is the second report that is going to be required in the PMF at the same time. So those are going to be two separate submittals. But the baseline performance report, which we refer to as the BPP, for the second performance period, and that second performance period started January 1st of 2022. So that submittal will also be due October 1st. And those questions are also available on the Federal Highways TPM, the Transportation Performance Management website, under guidance. Those who've gone through this before, we sort of have a cycle of reaching out both internally to our federal highway folks and then externally to state DOTs about how to access the PMF and additional information surrounding the submittals. So there's going to be plenty more coming on that. And just one thing I'd just like to highlight on asset management is that we just recently posted a new study titled Demonstrating the Application of Life Cycle Planning on the Pavement Network. And it's a pilot project using Arizona DOT. And that's posted on the Federal Highways Asset Management website, as well as a couple of other related documents to life cycle planning that you can see if you go, again, look under the publications section. So with that, I'll take a moment if there's any questions. I saw a couple flash in the chat pod.
Any questions for Nelson? Either raise your hand. I'm sure that urgency for Alexis was the GHG performance measure, right? That NPRM is coming out tomorrow.
Well, you know what, Matt, yeah, like most, I'll just tell you the truth, it's something else, other critical problem. But yeah, the GHG thing and something else about asset management that is sort of logged down in just sort of process. But we'll get there eventually, all right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. I don't see any other questions coming in from anybody. So thanks, Nelson. Hopefully you can stick around and kind of listen in. But if you do have questions for Nelson, feel free to type them in the chat, and I'm sure he can respond to them there. So I think next up on the agenda is me to give a couple quick updates and maybe not so quick updates. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Bear with me. The first thing, Matt Hauberg had a question. He raised his hand. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I think it was Kelly Travelby had a question. want to make sure you saw that before we move.
Yeah,
on.
I did see that. And actually, just a quick, Matt, not to step on you, but a quick response. So Kelly's question was about the attachments that are required for both right now, especially for the CMAQ performance plan. The way we have it structured is that that one plan will be, but there's got to be the information that is required in both the FPP and the BPP for that plan. There's some more information provided, but we're going to provide some more detail as we get closer. So, and I'll respond to you to this in writing.
Great, thanks, Nelson. I feel like there was a song from my childhood with something with FPP or something like that that I'm remembering in my brain as some humor there for people to figure that out. Next up is the AASHTO update. So there are a few things that I wanted to cover when it came to the AASHTO update. And just very, very quickly, I kind of talk about this. Number one, IIJA and BIL implementation. AASHTO is currently, analyzing the bill. We did a big push back in December for this. And we are in constant communication, talking with USDOT at all different levels, from, I would say the secretary's level, administrator level, and then also in discussion forums like this, where we have our friends from the individual offices and everything kind of listening in to what the states are talking about. But if you go to policy.transportation.org, that's where all the information from AASHTO is located, the most recent information. And then as we get new information like appropriations, right? That a couple of weeks ago that came out, and I typically send out broadcast emails to everybody with my mantra that sharing is caring. So hopefully those are of use to you in some way. So that's IIJA BIL implementation. The second thing that I want to mention is, and I included this in the email yesterday. I'll put a link to this in the chat as well. Is our conference coming up? So December 5th through the 8th in beautiful Providence, Rhode Island. It's going to be 65 and sunny. Christos promises me in December. We're going to have the 2022 AASHTO conference on performance-based planning, management, and data. So please mark that on your calendars. We have a very robust and jam-packed agenda for you planned for that week, starting on Monday, and likely for some of you going through Friday morning. So please make some time. I think there'll be a lot of great information, workshops, peer exchanges, that sort of thing. So please put that on your calendar. We hope to see you there. And then the last thing that I just wanted to share, and it kind of goes back to some of the stuff that Nelson was talking about, as well as the various new report periods and everything coming out. So I had this sort of ongoing analysis of the safety performance measure data. So I've analyzed the past 2 years. My understanding is that the third year of the performance management safety data is coming out. I have it summarized in sort of a presentation. I'm not going through this presentation, but if you're interested in kind of understanding, having some sort of high-level statistics, information about what states are doing when it comes to making significant progress for the safety performance measures, I have some of that analysis. We have an NCHRP project that's being hopefully approved in April with the Research and Innovation Committee, looking to do a more robust analysis of not just the safety measures, but PM2, the asset-based measures, and PM3 as well, because we have a lot of data with this. And I think it's we can turn that into some good information and tell some really good stories. If the safety data is of interest to you, I've also put together what I call sort of individual state reports. And I can do this for your state if you want it, but it basically summarizes. So this is just all I have it for is the safety data. And it just goes through for the years that we have data in terms of what's going on. Did you make significant progress? Information about did you have to use the baseline, and then looking at targets, actual comparison to the baseline, that sort of thing. So if you're interested, or something like this would be of use to you, let me know, send me an email, put a chat in, and I will get one created for your state. But this is the individual data. This is all pretty much publicly available information, just kind of trying to put it in a format that's a little more easily consumable by people. And the other thing that I want to point out is that I think, and maybe Nelson, I'm not sure if you can mention this or not, I think the 2020 data, the assessment of making significant progress, those letters going out to all the different states should be coming out, I want to say sometime this month or maybe in April, just to sort of make you aware. Again, it's just for the safety data, but hopefully I can get that data and kind of add it to the table here so that we can kind of see what's going on. Maybe get some trend information. It'll be 3 years, not 2 years. So hopefully we will get there. So just that's kind of the quick update from AASHTO in terms of what's going on. But before I get into the other things that I have to talk about, but Nelson, I see you turned your camera on.
Yeah, Matt. So that is the sort of expected schedule. But again, so there's never any promises from stuff pre-release of information, but that is the schedule. So you're right on.
Okay, great. Yeah. So just for the states, just FYI that the 2020 data, making significant progress assessment with the 2020 data will be coming out, soon, basically. All right. So with that, let me talk about. So next up on the agenda is sort of a quick overview of what's going on with the AASHTO, with our pooled fund program, and then our technical service program. So Christos, if you have anything to say, please interrupt me and stuff like that. But wanted to take you through a quick overview in terms of what's happening with this transition from the pooled fund program, which helps to support webinars such as this, and transitioning to our technical service program. So the 4 things that I want to cover, just an overview, benefits of the TSP, and again, the TSP, the technical service program, is very similar.
Matt,
yes.
Since you told me to interrupt you, at least on my computer, your screen doesn't show up right. So maybe it's me, but maybe it's other people as well. The presentation, half of it was out of the screen.
What about now?
Looks good to me.
Yep, perfect.
Okay. All right. So just want to cover the overview of what this TSP is, benefits, and the sort of the distinction between core services and optional services, funding, how much is it going to cost, and then what we're doing to transition from the pooled fund to the technical service program. So the TSP, again, is very similar, almost mirrored exactly what was offered in the pooled fund program. The reason why we're doing this is that pooled fund programs have a certain life to them, and they can't go beyond, I think it's like 5 years is the limit. We got an exception for the current one, but there was a lot of interest in the pooled fund program, and then we used that as a reason of why we should create this AASHTO technical service program. So the types of activities that we're going to be funding through the technical service program: identify, develop, training, right? Training needs, sharing, retention of performance management best practices. We want to develop tools and resources for you, the states, and really transportation agencies to use with regard to performance management, and then provide access to specialty services, experts, consultants as needed. That's kind of the optional one, but that if you want to pay for those additional services, you'll be able to. And then again, the focus, which mirrors our current structure for the Committee on Performance-Based Management, we have our 4 sort of topical or subject matter areas: asset, organizational, risk management, and then system mobility and emerging technologies. So that's what we're kind of focusing in on. So if you've used any of these web-based resources so far, the Transportation Management.us hub, the top one there is the TPM portal, the blue one is the asset management portal, and then the yellow one is the enterprise risk management portal. Those were funded in part and maintained through the pooled fund program. And that's one thing that we want to do, is to use the TSP to keep these resources going. And it doesn't mean just to keep the lights on the website, but to actually populate the websites with content, maintain it, curate it, make it better, that sort of thing. So And then William just put a chat in there about the research management system. That too would be funded in terms of maintained and everything by the technical service program. So also, the slide on the right here, we have started to offer up some training opportunities through the pooled fund. We want to continue that through the TSP. So if you go to training.transportation.org, there's some free performance management trainings there. We want to make more of those. I mentioned the state DOT, assessment. So that the data analytics supporting you as states, we want to keep on doing work like that. And then finally, I think many of the states use the CAT Lab, their RITIS platform, to click on the easy button for the PM3 tools. So we want to keep on providing access to those states that need to pay for it and use it. So we're going to do that through the TSP, the Technical Service Program. So we have divided this up into sort of two different service categories. The key thing to note is that if you want to get access to the optional services, you have to sign up to participate in the overall TSP, meaning you're going to participate and get access and benefits from the core services. So core services, we're going to be developing and delivering capacity building resources. So that can include peer exchanges, trainings, workshops, conferences, webinars, that type of thing. We're going to establish and maintain the TPM information clearinghouse, hopefully grow it, expand it, and then support knowledge transfer among member departments. So with your annual election to join the TSP, that's $15,000 every year. You will get those services and it'll be included. Exactly what we provide will be up to, this is going to be governed by the CPB, the Committee on Performance-Based Management, including the leadership group. So that's where the governance of how we spend the money comes from. And then optional services, providing access to those deep dive PM3 analytics, and then customized implementation support, web portals. Those are optional services that you can get, pay extra for. So funding, as I said, the core services, $15,000 annually. Optional services, it varies and it's very customizable. But the key thing to take away, if you want access to the optional services, you're going to have to pay and join the TSP on an annual basis of $15,000. Now, the good thing, so I don't have time to go through, there's a very detailed presentation that talks about what's all involved in terms of accessing the University of Maryland CAT Lab PM3 web-based tools. It's about 20 slides, a lot of detailed information. I will send that out as part of this. And then we have the customized implementation support. Again, if you want to get access to certain experts, consultants, that kind of thing, we are modeling this off of an AASHTO model that has service units. You can contribute to the TSP, and then you can use that funding for your state for lots of different services. Again, completely customizable, completely optional. So what are we doing to transition between the pooled fund and the technical service program? So calendar year 2022 is a transition year. We're ramping down spending on the pooled fund, which ends on December 31st, 2022. That means all of the states that have access and are using and are paying for the University of Maryland CAT Lab tools, the RITIS tools, the Easy Button tools, you have full access through December 31st, 2022. And we're ramping up spending on the technical service program. And we're also going to be transitioning those that want to continue access to the University of Maryland CAT Lab tools. We have a process in place to allow you to do that. So the other thing to note is that for an AASHTO TSP, funding commitments occur annually. So every year you as a state can decide to join or not to join. That happens in June, and our AASHTO fiscal year goes July 1st of the previous year to June 30th of the fiscal year. So for example, our fiscal year 2022 started July 1st of 2021, and it goes through June 30th of 2022. We have received from FHWA a waiver that you can use SPNR funding parts A and B. Initially, it was just B. Recently, we got the okay for a Part A waiver. So we're in the process of getting that official letter and everything, but you can use either Part A, Part B, and not have to have that 20% state match. And just to reemphasize, we need states to commit sort of on a regular basis so that we can kind of build up our funding. So again, the AASHTO TSPs are annual commitments. Every year you are committing to it. As I said, governance, we used to have, it was just the pooled fund members. With TSPs, AASHTO TSPs, the committee that it's associated with, their steering group, their leadership group is the one that kind of oversees the governance of the spending of that, the money from the TSP. So, and again, just want to emphasize, you got to sign up for the core services to access the optional services. And we have a plan in place to a sort of a transition period for those states that want to keep on accessing the University of Maryland CAT lab tools, which I'll talk about next, a couple slides from now. So these are the current TSP states. We have 22 states that signed up for fiscal year 2022. Thank you very much. If you don't see your state on here and you're expecting to, let me know. Happy to add you to this. Those that are bold and have an asterisk, those were also original members of the TPM pooled fund. So hopefully they're finding some use and value in this. Our goal is to get more and more states to sign up every year for the TSP, but again, that can vary by year. All right, the last slide. If you are a current state that is a member of the pooled fund that is using the pooled fund to get access to the CAT lab PM3 tools, you have something that you need to start thinking about, considering, and then doing. So the states that in that first box there, those are the current users of the CAT lab PM3 tools using the pooled fund to access it. So if you're from any of those states, please take note. And or if you're a new state, so if you don't see your name in that list, your state name in that list, and you want to be able to access the CAT lab PM3 tools, you can do that. You just got to let me know. So next steps. So again, if you're from one of these states and you want to continue to use the CAT lab PM3 tools after December 31st, 2022, 4 things that you have to do. First, you want to decide, are you going to continue to need access to the CAT lab tools for the work that you do? Maybe you've developed your own resources and everything in-house. I don't know, but that would be the first question. If yes, do you want to answer the question, do you want to use the AASHTO TPM TSP, the Technical Service Program, to access the CAT lab PM3 tools? If yes, then you need to call up Michael Pack and or Greg Jordan at the CAT lab to get your pricing. They have standard pricing depending on the size of your state for certain aspects. For some of the more customizable services that they offer, it's sort of a case-by-case basis. And depending on what other services you buy into, they can kind of reduce costs elsewhere. So it's really critical that you, as your state, talk with Michael Pack and Greg Jordan to figure out and agree on what that pricing is. Once you do that, then you come back to me, and Greg and Michael can help you with that. And that's when you would sign a commitment letter with AASHTO that A, you're going to commit to paying for the AASHTO Technical Service Program, and B, this is the agreement, what you're agreeing to in terms of services with the University of Maryland CAT lab. The first commitment letter that you sign is going to be for an 18-month period, because we're trying to get onto the AASHTO fiscal year. Again, you have access to all of the states listed here have access to the University of Maryland CAT lab tools through December 31st of this year. Starting January 1st, you're going to have to access it if you want to through the TSP, the Technical Service Program. So we're going to do a letter of commitment that takes you January 1st through June 30th of 2024. And then it will be an annual cycle thereafter. So every year you can decide, do I want to join the TSP? Do I need these optional services? So hopefully that makes sense. We're not going to be double billing anybody. So when it comes to that 6-month period, January 1st, 2023, through June 30th, it's sort of a 6-month period off of the AASHTO fiscal year. The CAT lab is only going to charge you for 6 months because you've already paid for the 6 months between July 1st and December 31st. Again, happy to talk with states individually about this. And I know that Minnesota, Deanna Belden, has agreed to be our guinea pig state to sort of figure all this out and kind of get a template together for what the commitment letters and everything are going to be. So I'm going to stop there and very briefly ask if there are any questions from any of the current states on about what's going on with the TSP and then that transition from the TPM, the pooled fund, to the TPF, the pooled fund program to the technical service program. All right. Hopefully that was clear to everybody. And again, if you have any questions about it, please let me know. I'm happy to talk you through it.
Matt,
Yep.
just a quick suggestion on this, because this is really, I think, a lot to digest in such a quick amount of time on the PM3 tools. Maybe we can do a quick separate webinar and invite Michael to it as well,
Yep.
just relative to that. That way we don't take any more time out of today.
Gotcha. Yep. All righty. So next up on the agenda is to go through the Committee on Performance-Based Management's strategic plan. So I have a slide deck about that. And Tim, I just wanted to do a quick check-in. I wanted to give time for Deanna to talk about the new proposed task force. And I think that we should have her talk about the new task force, and then with the remaining time, talk about the action plan that we have going on, if that's okay with you.
I agree. And if time is too short, we could always do a quick webinar on that topic as well for those that are interested. We could just highlight in this particular forum. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that as well, since I left another meeting to come to see you guys today. So I think most of you know me, Deanna Belden with the Minnesota DOT. I've been thinking a while about what to do with the kind of newer emerging measures, or sometimes we've called them next generation. And I have to tell you what, we might have gotten a draft version of a task force charter. And the first thing we want to do is work on a better title. We have all the best and brightest on it, which means all of you have some other ideas rather than charter for the next generation measures. We're talking about maybe future direction, performance management topics, or advancing transportation performance topics. So anyway, we're not sure. So we don't want to get bogged down on the problem with the title, but the idea was there's lots of new areas here now that aren't our standard ones. We're working on multimodal accessibility measures. We're working on equity. We'd like to be able to measure and report health outcomes that are coming from our great transportation investments that assist in that, and let alone climate change. So the idea is we would have this task force. It'd be cross-cutting, and depending on what's happening at the time, the work would be more focused. And I would say that maybe the first thing that might come in might be the GHG measure that we're expecting from Federal Highway. Perhaps this task force, we'd be willing to spearhead getting comments on that when they do the notice of proposed rulemaking. But additionally, looking at the areas that are that state DOTs are having more broad mission and vision statements nowadays that are more cross-cutting to other areas, and we'd like to be able to measure that. I know Utah has officially a quality of life either initiative or measure. I'm not, so I actually don't know what they have. I just know they're doing something with quality of life. And Minnesota's tried that in the past. And I don't know why Matt's showing a budget on the screen instead of what I'm, so this group would try to tackle some of those issues. So I would say it includes new performance measure development, if appropriate, for the expertise in the task force, but also then how to integrate such new measures in decision making. And the idea might be, once something is not new, once it becomes either standard practice or there's enough guidance out there on how to utilize it, then it would maybe move to its appropriate place. So this is the introduction I have for you on this new proposed task force, and taking any and all names, but that would be the first, probably the first thing we work on as a task force, and also to nail down if this charter looks good. And I think that's what I have today. We're looking for members. And I think, is that right? Because the Committee on Performance-Based Management Leadership approved that we would move forward. We were hoping for the best title in the world by today, and we don't have it yet. But like I said, I'm asking the best and brightest. So if anyone who contributes an idea is part of that group of best and brightest.
You've got it right, Deanna. We thank you for your work on this. We need to generate a committee, and then that committee can help us to answer that committee title question, as well as make sure and refine that the scope is correct. Come back to the leadership, and we can keep things moving. Thanks for all your help.
Thanks. I'll go back to my other meeting today. I see I have one volunteer. If I'm missing any, send your names my way. Thank you.
Important task. If you're interested, please let us know. The sooner we can get this off the ground, the better. Back to you, Dr. Hardy.
All right, thanks, Tim. And we'll be sending out more information via email about the task force that Deanna is going to be spearheading. So the last thing on our agenda for today, well, before sort of some wrap up and everything, is to sort of just brief you on the action plan and what's going on with the committee's action plan. I don't have time to go through this in great detail today, but just want to let you know what all the what all the subcommittees and work groups and task forces have been up to. So every committee within AASHTO had to develop an updated action plan, is what AASHTO is calling them. It was limited. The instructions that we got is that the action should be limited, things that we can do, given the resources that we have. So the way our committee is structured, we have the leadership group, which meets on a monthly basis. We have technical subcommittees that are led by, chair, vice chair, co-chairs by different people. We have coordinating work groups. The intent is to coordinate the work that's cross-cutting among all of the technical subcommittees. And then we have this the new task force that Deanna is going to be spearheading on performance measures in general. So those are the different groups that we have within the committee. And what the committee approved last year was an overall action plan that all of these groups sort of agreed to. And we came up with 13 actions, and they were divided into 5 different categories. The first category are technical support and services. You can think about these that are actions that each of the technical subcommittees on assets, organizational management, risk management, and then system mobility and emerging technologies. Those are the bread and butter, I think, of what this, the technical subcommittees are doing in terms of supporting its members. So establish, support, and promote the technical service program, develop and advance agency capabilities, and then broaden the understanding, application, and use of relevant resources related to transportation performance management. The following 4 categories kind of relate to 4 different groups. The first one is about policy and rulemaking. So action items 4 and 5 really focus in on policy and rulemaking. Actions 6 and 7 focus in on research. William Johnson's leading that. And then actions 8 through 11 focus in on professional development. Ryan Huff from Nebraska leads that one. And then action items 12 and 13 are ones that the CPBM, the actual leadership group, is going to be focusing in on. So those are at a higher level for the for the committee. What each of the subcommittees and the work groups has been working on is to identify some actions, some, if you want to call them sub actions or whatever, under each one of the numbered items of saying, okay, what specifically is asset management going to do, or risk management, that sort of thing. And that's what this presentation has in it, is more of those details. So for example, action item number 1 is to establish, support, and promote the AASHTO TPM technical service program. So the leadership group on an annual basis is going to disseminate and encourage all of the states to kind of sign up for it. And then asset risk and system mobility and emerging technologies have sub actions that they're going to be doing as well, to sort of use the resources available within that TSP. So that's for action item number 1. I'm not going to go through all those, just trying to give you a flavor in terms of what's in here. And then action item number 2 is to develop and advance agency capabilities by developing needed resources and guidance. So you can see, again, 3 of the 4 technical subcommittees have very specific actions that they're going to be working on this calendar year related to that action. So that's what you're going to see for each one of our 13 actions, sub-actions that each of those groups, the leadership group, technical subcommittees, coordinating work groups, and the task forces are going to do over this calendar year. It might bleed into 2023, to be honest, but that's what they're going to be sort of working on. And we're going to use this, the leadership group, and I think the subcommittee and work group leaders, to really define and shape and structure the activities that they're going to do over the next 12 months. So as they have their regular meetings, their webinars, their conference calls, they're going to go back to this resource and say, hey, what is it that we said we were going to do? How do our actions that we're doing, the activities that we're doing, relate back to the actions we said we were going to do within our broader Committee on Performance-Based Management action plan? So this was finished very early this morning. I will send it out to the entire group so that they kind of have access to it. Again, always seeking feedback. This is a living document that we're going to be updating on a regular basis, and also thinking through how can we post this in a way that all of, everybody can kind of easily access and kind of relate to, and again, use it on a regular basis to help guide the work of the committee and the subcommittees and work groups underneath it. So with that, Tim, I will stop and turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Hardy. A couple of administrative and housekeeping tasks before we wrap up today. First, a reminder, please visit the TPM portal if you're interested in viewing the pre-recorded subcommittee and work group updates. Those videos are posted on the event page for today's meeting. Let me check just to see if anybody has any questions. Let me move then to Karen Miller and see if we can recap any action items that we need to carry forward. Karen?
Can you hear me?
Very well, thanks.
Great. So plan to participate in the next research symposium the week of May 2nd, and there'll be a link in the action items to the research management system. Save the date, December 5th through 8th. Put a hold on your calendar for the AASHTO Conference on Performance-Based Management Planning and Data, happening in Rhode Island. If you have not yet signed up for the TPM TSP, the Technical Services Program, Matt Hardy just went through in detail. Contact him for more details. And if you're interested in joining that Next Generation Performance Measures Task Force that Deanna just talked about, contact her. And last but never least, please participate in an AASHTO subcommittee, work group, or task force. Anyone in your organization can participate. And we'll include a link to those subcommittee work group updates in the action items. And that should do it.
Excellent summary, Karen. Thanks for your help with that. With that summary, that concludes our program for today. My thanks to all of you, the attendees, as well as members, friends that have contributed to the success of this work today, as well as to regular committee work. Special thanks to the presenters, Deb Miller, Michael Grant, Perry Lubin, for your excellent information today. And thanks again to Nelson for your continued partnership, and to Matt Hardy and to Lori Richter, who really helped to organize these meetings and to help to make those successful. Again, the notes and materials for this meeting are posted on the TPM portal. That concludes our business today. Thanks, everybody. Please stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll see you next time. That's a wrap.